And greetings. Happy Monday. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show here, live and on demand on BlazeTV, radio, and podcast. Hope you had a great weekend. I'm Steve Deace with Todd and Aaron McIntyre. We've got a short week lined up for you. It's our perennial spring break vacation, otherwise known as I like to take the first 2 days of the NCAA tournament off and chill out and relax. So we've got a lot to pack in for the next 3 days. We're going to do as much of that as we possibly can. We're brought to you by our friends over at First Cup Coffee Company. They've got a flavor for every freedom-loving American. But don't just buy it because it shares your values as a company. Do it because it makes some really great coffee. And you'll find the roast on date right there in every single bag. Freshness is kind of their jam. Go to firstcup.com. Use the promo code DACE to get access to a discount. Firstcup.com, promo code DACE to get access to a discount at firstcup.com. Coming up at the bottom of the hour, our friend and colleague Steve Baker is going to join us. He continues to unravel and unpack the January 6th narrative. You know, we've been asking a certain question for the last 5 years, or going on 5 years. Who's Ray Epps? Now there's another name that has emerged. We need to be asking who this individual is. And we'll get into that coming up with Steve at the bottom of the hour. Next hour, the return of a tradition unlike any other. Marxist Madness makes its long-awaited return. We will break it all down, and we will unveil the field for you in hour 2, joined by our friend and colleague Jill Savage for that. I've not seen any of these selections at all. I will react. Jill will as well, alongside all of you in the audience. I am told this is a very tough field, and there could be upsets aplenty. So we'll break it all down for you coming up in the next hour of the show. And for our subscribers today, Ask Me Anything is in the overtime today. We got, I told you to pick the 10 best ones off of X that we got, Todd, correct?
Correct.
All right, so we've got the top 10 questions that were posed to me on every subject imaginable, courtesy of Todd's judgment. We'll answer those today in the overtime for Blaze TV subscribers. If you want to be there so you don't miss it and miss all the other exclusive content we do for you every day here at The Blaze, go to blazetv.com/Deace to become a subscriber at a great big discount. blazetv.com/DEACE. And with that, let's get it started as we always do with Aaron's rundown of what happened while we were away.
What happened while we were away, brought to you by AutoPen. Late last night, President Trump announced that oodles of preemptive pardons by Joe Biden on his way out of office are null and void. Trump says Biden used something called AutoPen instead of his real written signature to sign the documents for those pardons, and furthermore says Biden had no idea who the pardons were for. Now, Democrats are left to defend once more the novel practice of preemptive pardons for lawmakers on the January 6th panel. Retired U.S. Army General Mark Kelly and former NIAID Director Anthony Fauci and his family members. Trump this weekend announced actions against Iran-backed Houthi rebels in Yemen who have been messing up shipping and travel in the Gulf of Aden, Red Sea, and Suez Canal. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says the Biden administration left a mess.
This is a very important shipping lane, and in the last year and a half, the last 18 months, the Houthis have struck or attacked 174 naval vessels of the United States, attacking the U.S. Navy directly 174 times, and 145 times they've attacked commercial shipping. So we basically have a band of pirates, with guided precision anti-ship weaponry, and exacting a toll system.
Now there's this. President Trump invoked the Alien Enemies Act of 1798 over the weekend, and promptly another rogue judge tried to block him. Trump was using the statute in order to deport violent Venezuelan gang members out of the United States. However, U.S. District Judge James Boasberg is apparently a friend of violent gangs and terrorists, and he tried to stop the Trump administration from deporting those thugs. Judge Boasberg was among the judges on the FISA court that okayed the spying operation on the 2016 Trump campaign, which became the genesis of the Russian collusion hoax. Nevertheless, the Trump administration defied the judge, and the deportation flights continued this weekend. And now some polls. A CNN poll asked respondents who they think the leader of the Democratic Party is. An equal number, 4%, say Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett or former President Barack Obama is the leader. The person the most people think is the leader of the party is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez at 10%. An NBC News poll found that just 7% of Americans have a very favorable view of that party, a new record low. That same NBC News poll found 44% of the country thinks we're on the right track, the highest number in 21 years. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, after playing chicken with the government shutdown last week, folded like a cheap suit and got other Democrats to join him in passing the continuing resolution that was last week's topic of debate. right. In other news, the Daily Mail reports that a classified dossier compiled by Sir Richard Dearlove, ex-head of the MI6, was passed to then Prime Minister Boris Johnson in March of 2020, and it stated, quote, "It is now beyond reasonable doubt that COVID-19 was engineered in the Wuhan Institute of Virology," end quote. Again, that was in March of 2020, right as the world went mad. Disgraced pastor Robert Morse has been indicted on 5 counts of lewd or indecent acts with a child, and a warrant has been issued for his arrest, with the embattled accused pedophile expected to turn himself in this week. Morse, who once pastored Gateway Church, the largest church in America, saw his world implode after Cindy Clemshire accused Morse of sexually abusing her from the ages of 12 to 17 starting in 1982. The abuse reportedly began during a Christmas visit in Hominy, Oklahoma, and continued over 4 years. Oklahoma Attorney General Gentner Drummond is using a frontier-era statute to indict Morse. That statute was designed to ensure outlaws didn't escape justice even after the statute of limitations ran out on their crimes. The co-founder of a British Rainbow Jihad group has been found guilty of raping a 12-year-old boy he met on Grindr. Stephen Ireland, a 41-year-old, was convicted of raping the child in the Addlestone apartment he rented back in April of 2024. Senator Mark Kelly, attempting to stick it to Elon Musk, traded in his electric Tesla for a Chevy Tahoe with a conventional gasoline engine. Yes, the Trump administration has even succeeded in getting Democrats to buy regular cars once again. And finally, it is St. Patrick's Day. You know what that means.
Well, just in time for St. Patrick's Day, crowds are coming by the dozens to get an up-close view at what some say is a piece of Irish folklore.
Some people in the Crichton area of Mobile say a leprechaun has taken up residence in their neighborhood. A leprechaun. NBC 15's Brian Johnson has more.
Curiosity leads to large crowds in Mobile's Crichton community, many of you bringing binoculars, camcorders, even camera phones to take pictures.
To me, it look like a leprechaun to me. All I gotta do is look up in the tree. Who else seen the leprechaun say yeah?
Eyewitnesses say the leprechaun only comes out at night. If you shine a light in its direction, it suddenly disappears. This amateur sketch resembles what many of you say the leprechaun looks like. Others find it hard to believe and have come up with their own theories and explanations for the image.
My theory is it's casting a shadow from the other limb.
Could be a crackhead that got hold to the wrong stuff, and it told him to get up in a tree and play a leprechaun.
We're going to get down to the bottom of this. Yeah, it's still on there, guy. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid, man.
This guy helping to direct traffic says he's prepared for his encounter with the leprechaun. He's suited up from head to toe.
This wars off smells right here. This is a special leprechaun flute, which has been passed down from thousands of years ago from my great-great-grandfather who was Irish. I just came to help out.
Others just came to get lucky in hopes a pot of gold may be buried under this tree.
I'm gonna run a backhoe and uproot that tree. I want to know where the gold at. I want the gold. Give me the gold. I want the gold.
This is Brian Johnson, NBC 15 News.
And that's what happened while we were away.
That's never not funny. Aaron's montage brought to you by our friends at Constitution Wealth. Attention investors, good news. We believe we are turning the tide for the battle for the soul of America. Trump has been elected and is beginning the Herculean task of pushing back against the forces of wokeism in the country. Many businesses beginning to mothball their DEI, CRT, and ESG programs and focus on serving customers, all customers, rather than political interest. Well, what about you? Have you joined the movement of Americans who are using their investments to hold companies accountable for their ethical behavior? And if you'd like to join that movement, other patriotic citizens as well, you can align your investments with your conservative values by going to constitutionwealth.com/blaze for a free consultation. That's constitutionwealth.com/blaze for a free consultation. Constitution Wealth is a registered investment advisor. You should review their disclosures at constitutionwealth.com to understand their services and fees, and that all investing involves risk, including the risk of loss.
That's a perfect live read after what we just saw. They want the gold.
They want the gold, indeed. And they can show you what exactly you need to do with that gold as well. I mean, there is a ton of good stuff. I mean, this was a very eventful weekend of news. I'm going to try to actually see if we can get through every single one of these.
You could do a whole show on like 5 of those topics.
I agree. I'm going to see if we can touch a little bit on every single one of these. Number one. Well, I'll just take them in the order that Aaron presented them. Number one, to me, I think it is very politically shrewd for two reasons to go after the legitimacy of these digital signatures by former President Biden on these pardons. Number one, it will force some form of adjudication of this case. And the adjudication would require some chain of custody. Something would have to be demonstrated to show that is a digital capture of the former president's legitimate signature being replicated, which would then take us into the chain of command of that previous White House, who was actually calling the shots, who was actually making the decisions, because it's pretty clear a dementia-rattled president was not doing so. Number two, because of what I just said, this thrusts this narrative back into the media. And it's a very unpopular one. It caused the Democrats to destabilize their entire party in the middle of the last election cycle. And it discredited whatever was left, and I mean whatever was left, of corporate media's credibility was completely blown on June 27th of last year. And that was the day after the debate. And America woke up, realized, and went to work, and everybody discussed amongst each other, man, I guess all that stuff of Biden wasn't fake news. We all saw it. Now we can't unsee it. So there's no L here for the Trump administration. I mean, I think it's unlikely they would win at the Supreme Court, but you force some form of adjudication of it if you want to press on the issue. And then number two, you also have the situation from a political standpoint. You're forcing the Democrats to be tethered to a very unpopular narrative. You're resurrecting that millstone and putting it around their necks. There's no L here. It's actually very shrewd. And then if we want to get like really cynical, we could say, as your base is getting increasingly impatient with why it's taking so long to get anything from Epstein and the Kennedys, this is a nice little distraction that buys you maybe a few days or a few weeks with your own base. So this works politically on multiple fronts, in my view. Number two, there's nothing new under the sun. I mean, what's happening with the Houthis, this is just a reset of the very first war the United States of America ever fought. The very first war the United States of America ever fought as a country was against the Barbary Coast Pirates, who literally told our ambassador at the time that they were doing on the high seas and in the open waters exactly what President Trump says the Houthis are doing to us now, that they were doing this to us in the late 18th century because Muhammad told them to. I mean, they literally just told our ambassador that. We're kufr, and Muhammad told us to do so. So there's nothing new here under the sun whatsoever. And it is ultimately a reminder, again, it doesn't matter what prophetic view you have about this iteration of Israel. That doesn't mean you have to agree with all of Israel's policies. Our show was extremely critical during the COVID era on both Bibi Netanyahu and Naftali Bennett, his successor, for really barbarian levels of lockdowns from Bibi, and then the amount of experimentation on his own people that Naftali allowed to occur, courtesy of being Pfizer's largest human study. Nevertheless, the worldview chasm is massive. There isn't, there never has been, and there never will be an open source of people inspired by Judaism to come after American ships and American property in broad daylight from any motivation whatsoever, because it doesn't exist within their religion. It does within Islam, and it always has, and it always will. There is a worldview chasm here. It is not the people who are friends of Israel or are Jews or Israelis doing this to Americans. It's the people who believe in a made-up place called Palestine and a made-up people called the Palestinian people who do this. Always has been, and it always will be. So you can have whatever views of prophecy that, frankly, a lot of you articulating these views don't really understand, if we're really being honest. You don't really, truly understand that which you're, kvetching about. You just have a rightful instinct that you kind of want to go against what failed America and the West for the last generation, and I don't blame you for that at all. Right? I don't have a problem with question everything. My problem is, where are we going for the answers? If we're questioning everything, but there's no answers, well, then that's demonic. That's the did God really say native tongue. If we're questioning everything to find answers, I've got no problem with my worldview being held up to scrutiny. I'm pretty confident I can defend it. Otherwise, I wouldn't have adopted it. Would have embraced it if I didn't think I could defend it. And then if you can debunk things about it that I hadn't considered, then maybe I've got the wrong worldview. Fair? Mm-hmm. So let's come now and let us reason together. I don't have a problem with questioning everything. I have a problem with there's no answers to everything. And that some answers are just not really obvious. Here's what's really obvious. There's no sect of Judaism doing what the Houthis as a sect of Islam are doing. And there never has been, and there never will be. And there always has been, and there always will be, a sect of Islam doing exactly what the Houthis are doing. Because it's inherent to Islam. And you can believe whatever you want about Hal Lindsey's writings and the Plymouth Brethren and the Schofield Bible Notes. Again, like 3% of even my audience even knows what those things are. You can believe whatever you want about those things, but then there's just facts right in front of you that really have nothing to do with those things. Oh, by the way, where was the nation of Israel when we declared war on the Barbary Coast pirates, guys? Do you know where that was? The nation of Israel in the late 18th century? It didn't exist. It didn't exist, actually. And it hadn't existed for about 1,800 years, as a matter of fact. Or 1,700 years. It had been a minute since there was a nation called Israel when we had to declare war on the Barbary Coast pirates. Has nothing to do with Israel and everything to do with us and what they think we represent. So ignore that at your own peril. And I will keep reminding some of you of that. And the bitterness and hatred and what you put in my mentions, you just need to know, in case you didn't already, you're only fueling me. I enjoy provoking you. If anything, I need to be careful not to turn that into my own idol. I get off on it, actually. I just look for opportunities to poke at you because I can't stand that level of stupidity. Now, I think the Trump administration not only did what we have been calling for here, that it is time to defy the judges, but I also like the way that they did it. One of the things we found fascinating is when we watched what happened in Florida as a political science, really an ongoing observational study for about 3 years. What Ron DeSantis was doing there. And one of the things that I saw is that he was taking really Trump's political philosophy and marrying it to the kinds of tactics that the left has used against us. To me, the most obvious example is this. When the left does not make a grand pronouncement when it is going to violate a so-called norm or attempt to pry open the Overton window. Like the Joker, they just do stuff. They just do it.
They just start transing your kids.
Correct. They just do it. Wait for it to become the norm, and then put it around on you that you're the one going against the norm because they've reset what the norm is with their radicalism. What we saw in Trump's first term was branding can get you into office. But branding and governing are not often the same thing. They have to go together invariably. But if we're messaging without action, then what ends up happening is you end up riling up your base at max lit and depressing your own. How many times we do this conversation from 2017 to 2019? Too many. So we're going to do, Trump would put out these grand pronouncements in his first term on Twitter. We're going to do this. MSNBC's programming block is set for the next 12 hours. CNN's as well. Every newspaper in America, every non-right-wing media source knows exactly what they're going to be discussing, right? And then often the action would not follow up the branding. Hey, listen, I understand getting people riled up with lock her up in a campaign setting. All right. But once you get into the governing setting, you have to deliver on a few things. Otherwise, what ends up happening is you absorb all the liability of your position in a 50-50. Well, it's not as 50-50 as it was a year ago, but still fairly split country. You absorb all the energy from the other balkanized, the other side of the balkanized United States. While at the same time, now you're depressing your own energy. And on top of that, you end up pitting your own side against each other from people that actually want the action versus the people that just feel like they have to be loyal to you no matter what you deliver because they are afraid of the other side. So you divide your own side while unifying and energizing theirs. Any of these shows sound familiar? We did this one a few times.
Yeah. You want the gold, Steve.
Indeed. And so what Ron DeSantis did is he borrowed that tactic from them. He just did the stuff. There were not like, weeks long messaging campaigns for school choice or we're going to ban abortion, within 6 weeks. Nothing. There was never any of that, actually. They just did it, and then they messaged it after they did it. They did the thing, and then they messaged it. Well, we did it. People found, cats and dogs didn't live together and monkeys flew out of nobody's butts. So maybe it's not that radical. Now you're the radicals, and now you're the ones going against the new norm. He flipped it around on him and routed him. What you saw here is a page out of that playbook. There was no post at 3 a.m. on Truth Social. Somebody's got to do something about these judges. One of these days, something must be done. This is crazy. No, they just deported these thugs anyway, and then said that. That, to me, is a pivotal tipping point moment of the Trump era, potentially. Messaging is important. Here's the thing. Here's what we need to understand in this era of politics. Messaging is vital to acquire power. Right? So you have to messaging is the pre-element. It's the preternatural element. Is the messaging. Messaging is required with all of us having one of these things. The good news is, I said at my speaking engagement in Ohio over the weekend, the good news is information is the most democratized it's ever been. And the bad news is information is the most democratized it's ever been. And the bad news is also we waited until we were a totally godless culture and largely and went on a second generation of government schools, rendering people incapable of critical thinking. And now information is democratized. So everybody thinks they're genius. We've never been a people dumber, but more confident in our stupidity ever. So you have to message to get power. But then once you have power, it turns. So the messaging is preternatural in politics. In the other side here, it's ex post facto. You do the stuff and then message it afterwards. Well, this is normal. We're fine. We got rid of the thugs. Why do you care? Why do you want the thugs to stay? Why do you want Venezuelan drug cartel guys to stay? Who's against us getting rid of them? Didn't they do that to us? We're shutting the country down. Well, why do you want grandma to die? Yeah. Why do you want to raw dog the air? Right? Do the thing. Do it. Just do it. Just do it. Then message it after the fact. And in the most normal terms possible. Why do you want foreign drug dealers to live in America? Why are you for that? No one would be for that. That's why we just got rid of them. And then you make that, we just got rid of them. And most people don't care what the courts say. Most Americans can't spell courts. But they also don't want Venezuelan drug thugs living in their neighborhoods. Can I get an amen on that?
Yes, you can.
So now you're on the side of the argument now has been reduced to, we're not having some, Sanballat, Tobiah versus Nehemiah argument on technicalities. Most people don't know, can't understand, and wouldn't want to if they could. We're having a very simple debate now. I can't come down from the wall. I'm doing a very important thing. I don't have time to respond to you in 9 layers of bureaucracy because we've got Venezuelan drug cartel thugs and we have to get rid of them. Otherwise, people are going to die. I have to act. I'm doing a very important thing. So it's not just that they did it, but the way that they did it, I think, holds promise. The CNN, that was a Freudian slip. The CNN NBC poll of where things stand with the Democratic Party. Did you guys also see where Gavin Newsom's popularity is? Yeah. It's totally imploded. Remember last week when I said about Stephen A. Smith? He's clearly trying to trump the Democratic Party, and he has the right message, but he's missed his window. What he's attempting to do cannot happen. It's too late for this, right? Well, Gavin Newsom's numbers in these same polls indicate this. Newsom has clearly realized they're too crazy to win. So he's launched a podcast, and he's lined up several, it's been Bannon, Michael Savage, and Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk's arguably the biggest name on the right now. Bannon is one of the most intellectually respected figures on the right now, and Michael Savage is like an OG of the original talk radio movement. And those are his first 3 episodes, and he's clearly attempting to make it seem like he's reasonable. His approval ratings with Democrats have imploded. The party Stephen A. Smith is trying to reach and Gavin Newsom is trying to retcon himself as part of does not exist and will not exist in the future until it's defeated. The liberalism of the Bill Clinton era is gone, replaced by the leftism of the Barack Obama era. The base of the Democratic Party are the harpies who are watching The View as we speak, or MSNBC shows. That's the base. That's why Newsom's numbers have imploded. And this goes to Chuck Schumer capitulating. He's from another Democratic Party, way more liberal than us, but one that actually enjoys making money and winning. You're not allowed to do that now. That's why there's no base outside of their hardcore base. Trump, remember what I said too after the, don't call it a State of the Union speech. Trump walked in there with the plan of taking what we have known in the last generation as the left of center to right of center mainstream and claiming all that ground for himself. And the Democrats said, you can have it. And they continue to say this. This isn't about winning elections. This is about reverse engineering a generation. They're trying to win an argument with history. They're not going to water down or capitulate on anything. Nothing. Now, the good news for us is, as long as we continue to govern well, we'll defeat them because of that. The bad news is, if we don't govern well and don't keep our promises to the American people and they turn to them again, yikes. On the Robert Morris indictment, so that Oklahoma AG is a big-time rhino. Big-time rhino. And he's running for governor. So, thoughts and prayers to Robert Morris, because the Oklahoma AG, that rhino governor in Oklahoma, is a dog with a bone. Found himself an issue. Let me look like I'm tough on pederasts. That's what Robert Morris really is. So, I hope he's successful. I'll give the Oklahoma AG this. We're in an era where we've been disappointed on the right that a lot of our own politicians at least wouldn't take grandstanding opportunities, take advantage of those. We were like, those were the days. Remember when they grandstanded and took advantage of those opportunities? Won't even do that for us now. The Oklahoma AG is taking advantage of a grandstanding opportunity here. If you're shocked that a rainbow jihad leader was found guilty of raping a child, then you're probably also stunned to learn that British intelligence knew from the moment that anybody ever read the Imperial College survey that COVID-19 leaked from a lab. You're probably also similarly shocked. You're also mind-numbed and too dumb to procreate, so don't. All right? Or you're a communist. That's all I got. Gentlemen, your thoughts?
It's a lot. This whole montage and your answers remind me last week, somebody was posting it. I don't remember who. It went semi-viral. An old test that was given, a history test, I believe.
Yeah, I saw this.
That was given middle schoolers. Eighth graders, yeah. What you just saw and your answers to it are a modern day version of it. Are you familiar with this news cycle? And what are your answers to it? Because, as Steve said, there's a level of stupid going on both the right and the left in responding to reality as it is that is simply not sustainable, no matter what. So this is a good one to tune into. This is civilization defining stuff, line in the sand, drawing stuff. And, that's just one day on a cycle. Steve could have done an entire show on any number of these topics because the answer to those depends on whether our children have something to plant roots in the future.
Going back to the deportation flights and the way that this was done, there's a report that Stephen Miller, deputy, chief of staff for policy at the White House, he orchestrated this to go down exactly the way that it actually went down. Whereas he was aware that there was going to be a rogue judge that tried to block the alien enemies, the invocation of that statute. And so he planned this so that the flights would be over international waters by the time that judge made that ruling. Therefore, there's plausible deniability that judge doesn't really have any jurisdiction because that flight was over international waters. Okay, plausible deniability. Still subconsciously, however, you are setting the precedent. These stupid pissant judges really have no power whatsoever. Mm-hmm. That judge didn't have any power to turn around a couple of airplanes. Mm-hmm. You're setting the precedent in kind of breadcrumb fashion. I like that.
I agree. All right, we've got a new question to join Who is Ray Epps on the January 6th narrative next. right, back here on the Steve Deace Show, and if you have given up the fight against the chronic pain that you are struggling with, don't give up till you try our friends over at Relief Factor. No guarantee, but the odds are pretty good that it can provide you at least some relief, because over the years, 1 million people have taken the 3-week Quick Start Challenge from Relief Factor. 70% of them saw such good results in 3 weeks or less. They stuck with the product long term. It's a drug-free supplement created by doctors, though, who can prescribe drugs, but those can, even when they work, just mask pain and sometimes produce side effects as well. So what about something drug-free that went right after the inflammation in your joints? That's likely the reason you're manifesting chronic pain, that stiffness or achiness, soreness that just kind of lingers. That something is Relief Factor. Again, no guarantee here, but the odds are pretty good, at least worth trying when it's just $20 to find out. So why don't you see if you don't see a difference in your pain level in 3 weeks or less when it just costs $20 to find out by going to relieffactor.com. That's relieffactor.com, or give them a call at 800-4-RELIEF. Well, it didn't take long since the January 6th narrative was unveiled for people to begin asking questions about a gentleman named Ray Epps. And they kept asking because it was kind of weird that anybody else who just astral planed in their imagination the possibility they might step into the House Rotunda on January the 6th was put in prison by Judge Chutkin there in Washington, D.C. And here's a guy we have on tape telling people the night before, hey, we got to go into the Capitol. Hey, we got to mount up. And yet he just seemed to tiptoe between the raindrops, right? Well, now there's another name that I think we need to start asking who is. In this case, the name is Aaron Black. Who's Aaron Black? And many of us had no idea who he was until a breaking news story from our friend and colleague here this morning at The Blaze from Steve Baker. Good to have you back on the show, Steve. How are you?
Great. Good to be with you again, my friend. Thanks for having me.
So let's start with this question. Who is Aaron Black? Who is he?
Well, that's a complicated story because, as our story shows, he doesn't want to be known. In fact, he even said in a Project Veritas sting back in 2016, nobody is supposed to know who I am. But his story goes back much further than that. We pick up his story in Occupy Wall Street, so 2011, 2012-ish, somewhere in there. And he was one of the principal organizers of Occupy Wall Street. Not many people knew about that. He kept a low profile, although he did do some interviews or some YouTube videos where you can find him doing speeches at Occupy Wall Street events. But more importantly, he was an active organizer, not just there in New York, but he set up the chapters all over the country. And then he reemerged in 2016. Project Veritas caught him in a sting where he actually admitted to, on camera, saying that the violence that started at a Donald J. Trump rally, a campaign rally in 2016 in Chicago, that was his people, and that he talked a lot about this technique he used called bird dogging, where he gets old ladies to get in line really, really early in the morning at these GOP rallies or campaign events like Donald Trump rallies, and then they go in there with their anti-Trump signs stuffed in their bags. They get them up on stage or they get them up on the front row, that sort of thing, and then they unfurl their signs and get MAGA guys to start getting verbally, caustic or whatever, or maybe even violent is what they're hoping to elicit from those types of activities. They call that bird dogging. So this guy is a specialist in what one of our sources called kind of a master of the political dark arts. And this is what he has done. He does these bait and switch diversionary tactics throughout his career. And then he goes silent again, and he's really, really good at scraping the internet of his personal information, except for the fact that, as they say, the internet doesn't forget. So we actually went the extra route and did a very dark web scrub on him and found a lot of information about this guy that he probably thought, well, it wouldn't be available on a typical Google search because it wasn't for us either. So anyway, he reemerges again here in the last few years with the label or the heading on his social media sites like X and Blue Sky as saying that he is the chief political advisor at Team Pelosi, and the photography to prove it.
fascinating, but that doesn't necessarily tell us why that matters right now. So connect the dots between who he is and January 6th.
Well, he is a lifelong, or at least in his adult career in politics, he has been a provocateur, an agitator, a organizer of DNC type events, counter protests. He has actually been overseas and organized protests even at G7, G20 meetings overseas with European protesters. This guy is a master at that. He's a professional riot starter, for lack of a better way of putting it. But what his expertise is in controlling the narrative. And we have him speaking to a high school. We have a video of him, or an article rather, of him speaking to a high school group of political wannabe activists, in which he explains that the key to everything and accomplishing everything that they want to do in terms of the political narrative is to control that narrative, control it first on the ground, and then, of course, in the communications on social media as well. And that's what he's great at. So what we have people talking to us now, finally. This goes back, I was given his name to look at about 7 or 8 months ago. And this lead came from a member of our intelligence community. That's all I can say about that. And as a result of that lead, he said, what I was told, if you want to know what happened on January 6th and who lit the fire, he goes, you need to look at this name, Aaron Black. He gave us a couple of other names as well, but those will come out in subsequent parts of our series here as we roll these out. But Aaron Black himself, whistleblowers are telling us that his primary function on January 6th was to control the narrative with visuals, like the Confederate flag being carried through the Capitol by a guy from Delaware, real bastion of Confederacy up there. And then, of course, the fact that, and this was one of the most incredible aspects of the day, is we're talking about a guy who helped organize a counter-protest at the rallies post-election in 2020. There was one in December, one in November, right after the election, November 14th, December 12th. And these were also organized by the same people that organized the rally at the Ellipse, Women for American First. They pulled the permits for Trump's speech at the Ellipse on January 6th. They pulled the permits for the side stages in November, the side stages in December. And at both of those events, there was a tremendous number of counter-protesters. There was violence, Antifa, BLM, Proud Boys knocking heads. At the December 12th rally, a Proud Boy was critically injured when an Antifa member stabbed him. And so there was a lot of violence at those events, a lot of video of that violence. And then suddenly at January 6th, the biggest event of Trump's career, there's no counter-protesters at all. Or were there?
He denied being there, but it turns out that he was.
Right. Yeah. He denied actually to one of his... it's hard to know how friendly these guys were. They apparently we're talking about a guy named Dustin Stockton, who is in our story there at the Blaze, and Dustin Stockton came into the political realm and emerged into other, as an activist there through the Tea Party movement at the same time that Aaron Black was organizing Occupy Wall Street. And then they began to collude together. The story is, from Dustin Stockton, is that they just basically shared notes on community organizing. That's what he says. But as it turns out, that there was a lot more collusion and organization between them than before. And in fact, Dustin Stockton admits in his January 6th committee transcript, when he was deposed there, that he had done and participated in those G7 and G20 protests over in Europe. He claims that he was working undercover at the time as an undercover journalist, and that he had infiltrated those organizations.
For Breitbart, correct? For Breitbart? For Breitbart.
Breitbart and others. Yeah, Breitbart and others. And then he also, we now know that he actually organized some of them himself. He actually participated in the actual organization of some of these BLM rallies.
So you're left with one of two options. This Dustin Stockton is either an associate of, Aaron Minter is his actual name. So he's either an associate of this Aaron Minter, or he got in so deep that he got played by Aaron Minter, essentially. Those are your two options, basically, based on your story?
That's That's exactly right, and we are far from making an absolute conclusion on that. But the reality is that this is what we know, Steve, is that the rally organizers themselves were deeply infiltrated by the left.
Mm-hmm.
They were deeply infiltrated by at the very least Aaron Black's associates and on the ground foot soldiers, and so not only were the rally organizers themselves infiltrated, but apparently the crowd themselves were organized and infiltrated. And one of the things that Dustin Stockton did reveal is that he was told by Aaron Black himself that he was not present on January 6th, and that in fact he was out of town until Dustin himself saw a photo of him on the Capitol steps. And then one step further, it was learned that, and we have this information as well from a source, is that the security company that was working the event that day had been contacted by Aaron Black, in which Aaron Black was afraid, actually concerned, that his comms had been geofenced by the FBI that day in the Capitol.
And just to show that if indeed this Aaron Black / Minter was involved in some kind of false flag operation on January 6th, instigating one, he's done this before, as you point out in your story. One of the most infamous events in Trump's original run in the 2016 primary. Right. I remember this very well, because I was on the other side of this with Senator Cruz's campaign. So I know this event very well. All right, because we got this one wrong, and our polling showed we were going to win, maybe even win the Illinois primary, and overnight we got absolutely destroyed. It was a threat of violence and a riot, and essentially he is the guy that you think instigated that event as well, according to your reporting.
Yeah, well, no, according to his own words, he instigated the event. He was caught in a Project Veritas sting on camera where he thought he was speaking to a new intern of theirs, because he was working with an organization called Democracy Partners at the time. And so he thought he had just been introduced to this new intern. Well, the intern was an undercover journalist working for Project Veritas in 2016. And that's where he actually said to them that those people that halted the rally and caused the rally to be canceled, he said, those are our people. And then he kind of caught himself. He goes, oh yeah, but nobody's supposed to know who I am. And then one of the most interesting aspects of our story, and of course you were there, you were working with the Cruz campaign at the time, was this Breitbart story, because Breitbart actually brought Aaron Black in, put him on Breitbart Radio, did an interview with them, and then what they were doing is, imagine this guy. This guy is a hard left Marxist organizer of DNC rallies, events, provocateur, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But he goes on Breitbart as a supporter of the Trump campaign.
So even they got fooled basically by this guy, is what you're saying.
Correct. Yeah. Absolutely, they fooled them, because what had happened was that the Hillary Clinton campaign had made the calculation that Trump was the weaker of the potential general election candidates. And so they were trying to pump up Cruz and Rubio. I'm sorry. They were trying to pump up Trump. Pump up Trump.
That's why he got 65 more times coverage than we did. They all thought that, and then they found out November of that year they were wrong. Okay,
that's right.
Yeah,
it all backfired on him.
So at the very least, we have a guy on record lying to a close associate that he was he was on the grounds on January 6th, and he lied about that. And this guy has a history of this kind of skullduggery on behalf of left-wing causes in other high-profile events, both here and abroad. At a bare minimum, you've uncovered the question similar to Ray Epps, who's Aaron Black. Why was he there?
We see his handiwork. We see what he has done throughout his entire career unfold on January 6th. And then when you do, and you take the effort and the hundreds and God knows it may be thousands of hours at this point of reading through the January 6th committee transcripts of all these people, all these characters, all the people that the committee drug in, and you start overlaying all of those into a mosaic, and you start seeing this, you start seeing it come together, and you start seeing the things line up, and as they line up, you go, all right, now we know where to look. But this particular character, as I said, was given to us by an intelligence community source, and he gave us a couple of other names as well. And I can just, look, everybody gets so mad at us because we do this, teasing thing, and it's not. I promise you and your audience, it's not a tease. It's just that we have to build a story. I have to go through a layer of 5 different editors. We have to go through legal. We have to go through months and months of vetting process of these sources, that sort of thing. It takes time. Just because somebody gives me a name and says you ought to look at this guy doesn't mean I can run to Twitter and post his name and said he's guilty of whatever. It takes a long time to put these pieces of the puzzle together and then to make sure that we have it right. So we do have some other names, and as we're putting this story together and as we're talking to the sources, both on the record and off the record, they're going back to other people and saying, hey, there's these guys over at Blaze Media that are asking us questions, and then it's causing our phone to ring. It's causing my DMs to fill up. Just the story that's out today that came out.
I've got 1 minute, Steve. Go.
Morning.
I've got 1 minute.
Yeah,
go.
Just the story today. We're already getting phone calls. I've already had 2 phone calls this morning of people who know the named characters in this story, and they want to talk. It just grows and it snowballs the more we go.
All right, so folks, pay attention to Steve and his work at the Blaze. Real quick, your handle on X, that's a great way to keep updated as well. Steve is what?
Yes, Steve Baker USA.
Steve Baker USA
on X, and that's the best way to find me.
Great work, my friend. Good to see you. All right, take care.
Thank you, Steve.
You bet. Brought to you by our friends over at realestateagentsitrust.com. In these unprecedented times, if you are getting back into the real estate market, because we really haven't had one for about 5 years between Let's Go Brandon and COVID, we're trying to get one of those and make it great again. All right, but that means even more than ever before. A lot can change in an industry in 4 or 5 years. All right, so more than ever before now, make sure you've got an agent you can trust to guide you through all those various changes and evolutions over the last few years, whether you need to get across the country, across town, across state. Ultimately, where you want to get is across the finish line of what can be, even in the best of times, a very stressful process of buying and or selling a home. All right, so get an agent you can trust, and the name says it all. We made it. It can't make it any simpler than this. Head over to realestateagentsitrust.com. Again, that's realestateagentsitrust.com. There you'll find an agent that will connect you with from usually right here in the Blaze audience. So they have values in common with you, but they also have an uncommon verified track record of success as well. realestateagentsitrust.com. All right, when we come back, Marxist Madness returns. Stay tuned. All right, back here with Hour 2, live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. I'm Steve Deace. Let us know what you think about what we think via the stevedeace.com inbox. Take advantage of that by emailing us, steve@stevedeace.com. That's DEACE. Like us on Facebook, MeWe, and Gab. You can follow me at Steve Deace Show on X, Instagram, and TikTok. Please subscribe to our new YouTube channel at Deace Show on YouTube. That's at Deace Show on YouTube, DEACE, at Deace Show on YouTube. And then if you love the podcast version, thank you very much. If you wouldn't mind, leave us a 5-star review so others can know about us as well through you. We appreciate all of you that have done that. Also, hit subscribe, or if you're on iTunes these days, follow, and that'll make sure that every time we do one of these new podcast shows, it shows up in your podcast feed every single time, and we appreciate all of you that have done that for us as well. As we appreciate our friends over at MD Hearing. I mean, I just got stopped by a friend of mine, earlier today. Hey, I've got some hearing issues going on in my ear. What do you recommend? I can just tell you this. My stepdad, Jim, I've hooked him up now with MD Hearing over the last couple of years, and he absolutely raves about MD Hearing. So if you're still paying thousands of dollars for hearing aids that maybe don't even work, MD Hearing makes high-quality, easy-to-use, rechargeable hearing aids with exceptional sound quality that are personalized to your hearing profile, and they cost a fraction of what typical hearing aids cost. Their Neo model cost over 90% less than clinical hearing aids. It fits inside your ear, so no one's going to even know it's there. They also just launched the Neo XS. That's MD Hearing's smallest hearing aid ever. MD Hearing, founded by an ENT surgeon who saw how many of his patients needed hearing aids but could not afford them, so he made it his mission to develop a quality hearing aid that anyone could afford, and that hearing aid is MD Hearing. So get the high-quality, affordable hearing aids you deserve with MD Hearing and go to shopmdhearing.com. Shopmdhearing.com. Use the promo code Steve to get a pair of hearing aids for just $297. Plus, they're adding a free extra charging case. That's a $100 value just for our listeners and viewers here of the Steve Deace Show. That's shopmdhearing.com. Promo code Steve. And you'll get a pair of hearing aids for just $297 at shopmdhearing.com. Promo code Steve.
I'm Aaron McIntyre, and I'm wearing a freaking suit. You might be wondering, Aaron, why are you standing right there? To which I say, mind your own business, I was getting to that. And now is the point where we get to that. Why am I wearing a suit and standing right here? Well, it can only mean one thing. It's time for the septennial tradition unlike any other, the Marxist Madness selection show.
Yes or no?
The first trans woman to have a successful uterus transplant.
Man enough to cook my steak rare.
But I felt God's presence with me as I made the decision to end 2 pregnancies.
I look like someone who has a mental disorder.
The garbage I see floating out there is just supporters.
Well, the big thing I learned doing this book is that the deep state is packed with patriots.
The impossible has happened! Where HIV is now, like, if you are undetectable, like, you don't necessarily, like, have to disclose that.
Oh my gracious, Tim! How about that?
And here we are. It is finally Selection Monday, the tournament that America really cares about and really needs. Let's welcome our panel, the aforementioned Aaron McIntyre, who is wearing a frickin' suit. Not just a suit. It's a frickin' suit, all right? Is that... What store sells frickin' suits?
You'd have to ask Ben, because once I showed him this cold open all week, want to see Daddy's frickin' suit.
You're raising a great American there. Todd Erzen, you ready to go?
Oh yeah, well, this is the one we need. I'm not so sure. I mean, we're trying to change a paradigm, make this one way more important than what happened yesterday.
And then we bring in our friend and colleague Jill Savage, who, like me, originally came from the sports media world and then crossed over into this one because she decided, frankly, she just had too many friends. And this will do it every single time. Jill, how are you?
That's a very true statement, Steve. They will just, they don't care about you anymore once you're not in sports. Once you go over to the dark side of conservative media, I was excited about yesterday's selection show. I am more excited about today's.
When you were at the Pac-12 network back in the day, did you do Selection Sunday stuff, tournament stuff, or bowl selection stuff for them at all?
Yeah. There was always a big show for the Pac-12 network. We were getting a lot of teams in. There was a lot to talk about, a lot to break down. So yeah, we've done this before.
Nevertheless, this is the big time. You weren't nervous for any of that, but for this, your heart's just beating out of your chest right now.
I can't wait.
So Aaron, let's lay out the format for everybody. All right, before we show the field. All right. I think a lot of this audience is kind of familiar, with how brackets work this time of year. But just in case, how's this one going to work?
Well, we have a field of 32 contestants for Marxist Madness. So 4 regions and we'll unveil those regions one by one here in just a moment. But 4 regions, 32 contestants. And you will have the opportunity to vote for who you think wins each matchup as we go along here. So we are going to be unveiling these region by region, as opposed to here are the number 1 seeds, here are the number 2 seeds, just region by region. That's how we're going to go about this today.
And then we turn it over to you, the people. You will decide. There can only be one champion. And you will decide who survives, who advances, who ultimately goes on that magical winning streak to win Marxist Madness. We'll unveil our first region here in just a moment. It's brought to you by our friends over at Deace Medical. You know, when it is up to first responders, we thank them for the sacrifices they make for us, but you need to recognize that even under the best conditions, you know, you're your own first responder if there's an emergency. So are you ready? One of the key tools you'll have in your toolkit is the Deace case from our friends over at Deace Medical. It's a backup of some of the most important medications like amoxicillin, doxycycline, and more that you now know you will have, with the peace of mind knowing you have them, just in case, oh, that could never happen here, or that could never happen to me, and it happens where you are, and it happens to you. And it also just happens to be that, hey, maybe those are the next ivermectin drugs, you know, drugs we give Nobel Prizes to and then suddenly take them away when they're needed the most. Speaking of which, now you can also grow your Deace case. You can customize it with additional options as well with their increasing menu of medications. And one of those does include the aforementioned ivermectin. All right, so get started today. Use the promo code DACE at checkout for a discount on your order when you go to jace.com, J-A-S-E, jace.com. Use the code DACE at checkout for a discount on your order. And when you go to jace.com, you can enter a giveaway for a free Deace case as well. Jace.com, promo code DACE. And now, Aaron, our very first region.
We begin in the tolerance region, and the number 1 overall seed in the 2025 Marxist Madness tournament is for Hamas. For Hamas will be taking on the 8th seed in the tolerance region, Screaming at Children. It's a Cinderella dream in the making for that Kamala supporter at the Houston rally. It's our first matchup. For Hamas versus Screaming at Children. The 2 seed in the tolerance region is Dick Levine.
Climate change is having a disproportionate effect on the physical and mental health of black communities.
Dick will be taking on the 7 seed Mamala.
We really all need a tremendous hug in the world right now. Yeah. But in our country, we need you to be Mamala of the country.
The 3 seed in the tolerance region is Vote Democrat to Save Porn.
Oh! Sorry, you can't do that.
What the hell, man? How'd you get in here?
I'm your Republican congressman.
Save Porn, Vote Democrat will be taking on the 6th seed. It's not Don't Ask, Don't Tell. It's Don't Tell, Don't Tell.
Anyone that you meet on your first date or like you're hooking up, like where HIV is now, like if you are undetectable, like you don't necessarily like have to disclose that. I don't think you're putting anyone at any risk that you have to like necessarily go through that.
The final matchup in the tolerance region is the 4 seed Mental Disorder.
I look like someone who has a mental disorder? I mean, some people would say that in the affirmative, but that is a rhetorical question.
And Mental Disorder will be taking on the 5 seed Shoot 'em.
There are going to be some males in our society that will refuse to vote for a potential female president because they don't think females are smart enough to be president. We could line all those guys up and shoot them.
And that guy got fired for saying that, but he's got a second life in Marxist Madness, and that does it for the tolerance region. Panel, what do you think?
I mean, if this is just the very first region, panel, holy cow. This is a loaded field of miscreants, demons, psyops, the mentally disturbed, but I repeat myself. Aaron, can you throw that bracket back up there? I want to zero in. To me, I mean, every one of these matchups is a banger, but the fact that my immediate reaction in that 2-7 matchup between Dick Levine and Mamala, because you guys know what I think about Dick Levine. I mean, I think we were the show that maybe even coined that name and pressed it upon him. So this would appear to be like an automatic, easy path to the next round. But that Mamala clip is so obnoxious. And then the fake, smug acceptance by Kamala as the audience cheers. I would have never. In fact, I would have been like, how is Dick Levine not the number one seed in the tolerance region? I mean, I think he's underseeded. You know, in my own bracketology, I had Dick Levine as a number one. I thought he was a clear number one seed. So I'm thinking maybe Aaron is the same guy that put North Carolina in the actual tournament field yesterday. But now that I see he's a number two, I'm not even sure he gets past the first round, guys. And I thought he was a lock number one seed. So I've got my eye on that 2-7 matchup there on Mamala. And then I also want to congratulate Aaron on behalf of Daniel Horowitz for finding a way to get the word onto our show for the very first time since Daniel, I think, drops it at least once per episode. So on behalf of Mr. Horowitz, helmet sticker to you, Aaron, for that.
Oh, it wasn't contrived at all. I mean, it was just literally the number 4 Hamas. That was the sign that the Hamas supporters were throwing up at that rally last year. So it's not contrived at all. Just quoting what the sign said.
I'm sure that's exactly all we're doing. I think we all agree on that. All right, Jill. As you take a look at this field, this is just the very first region, and it's banger after banger, and it's just region 1. What are your thoughts looking at this bracket?
I mean, the 1 seed is a clear 1 seed. When you look at it, I didn't know that we were even going to be allowed to say for Hamas on TV, but yet here we are because, like
said
Aaron
it 20
said,
times
it's a
now.
sign that they put
Maybe you're not allowed to say it 25.
on
Let's find out. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Jill.
Listen,
yes.
It's out there, so we're just going with what the people have presented Aaron. He is just taking exactly what they've done. But I would say my upset, because there's always going to be one, right? You have to have something. It can't just be chalk all the way. Don't tell that 3-6 seed. Mm-hmm. Don't tell is the one that I would have advancing out of that. Don't overlook that because if you don't think that you need to share anything that you could be potentially altering somebody's life for absolutely ever, those are big differences there.
I'm fascinated that, Jill, that you went with that as your potential first round upset, since the 3 seed there includes a not so subtle depiction of a man doing the 5-knuckle chuckle beneath his underwear there. Just curious your perspective on, are you projecting there and that you found that so vile that you're just kind of hoping there's an upset there, or is this your real hardcore, shall we call it, analysis?
Well, I think it's my real analysis, but don't tell. It's one of those things where you just look at it, and it's the way that it alters the future for somebody that's not yourself, Steve. That you have to be able to take self accountability here, and I think we're probably going to see that a lot in Marxist Madness. That what you project onto others. Well, this has real life consequences for that.
Jill, you're sitting there in Pat Gray's studio. Do you know if Democrats running an ad showing a dude in his mom's basement pleasuring himself to porn on his phone in the campaign, was that on Pat Gray's bingo card for the 2024 election?
It's not on anything on his desk around here. I don't know that it could have been, now after he sees this, it might be on the next bingo card that he has. I don't know when those come out, but it could be. We'll make sure that he knows that.
If we had predicted that, we wouldn't have predicted that. Even in the current cultural state we're in today, in all seriousness, would we have possibly predicted that would be a political ad by a major political party?
No.
And yet it was. So, I don't know. I think that's a strong 3 seed. I'm going to choose my words carefully there. All right, Todd, go ahead.
I think Dick Levine is going to run away with this thing. I do.
So you're overruling me. You don't think Mamala stands a chance?
For 2 reasons. No, I don't. Because do you remember, I think it was 2019, before all hell broke loose, Steve, you and I at the end of the year show had the same person of the year. And do you remember it was that chubby tranny guy? I don't remember his name anymore, but he was the first one of them really out there guy. We named him. We didn't compare notes. Just 2 short years later, that same kind of guy was running point on medical decisions and training all the kids. Like, I dare you to do better, Steve. And first.
See, that's why I thought Dick Levine had to be a number 1 seed. All right?
But
that Mamala clip, man, I'm just telling you, that is just oozing with Haterade, that Mamala clip is.
Yeah, but not a lot of strong conference wins for Mamala, to get there, I think. And first, I know it seems like maybe for Hamas is impossible to beat, but I think the big upset is number 8, screaming at kids, because you go to something like that and it's not because of the woman actually screaming at kids, but somebody with enough self-awareness, who the black woman in that screen, who actually said, no, that's a bridge too far. Even they knew that that woman had some insane level of game. So I think number 8 could upset number 1 here.
So, Aaron, just like, the head of the selection committee has to get questioned on Selection Sunday, we're going to do the same here on Selection Monday as we go through the region, if you don't mind. Just can you explain...
Because I said so.
Because you said so? Just the process that, you and the committee went through in giving for Hamas the number 1 seed. Again, that's for Hamas, the number 1 seed. For Hamas, the number 1 seed at for Hamas over Dick Levine. Your thoughts on going with for Hamas over Dick Levine there, Aaron?
Yeah, there was a 15-point rubric that I put in place for all 200 or so clips that I went through. They're based on 3 categories, 5 points each. One category is just bat crap insanity. The second category is viral potential. And the third category is just hilarity. And boy, howdy, there were several that achieved a full 15 score, and Dick Levine was one of those. But when you're sitting down as a committee, you just have to, kind of have to just use your own critical thinking and say, hey, not everybody can be a 1 seed, and for Hamas met that criteria in our meetings.
And you can't just it's not a power rating, right? Got to look at resume.
Yes.
Right? And so there is a certain resume for Hamas has compiled that, I can kind of understand it. A straight up power rating, maybe Dick Levine is favored on a neutral court. Maybe by 1 to 2 in a straight up power rating.
Maybe. But
if you're looking at the overall resume, there is just something uniquely, vile about for Hamas, who of course would not get away with being a in Hamas.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Correct. So yeah, if for Hamas can make it out of the first round, we might see Dick Levine versus the number 1 seed there. So we might have the answer to that question here in a couple of weeks.
It'll be very interesting to see what you people decide to do with the for Hamas as the number 1 seed in that region. Our next region brought to you by our friends over at Fast Growing Trees. Did you know they've got the biggest online nursery in the United States with thousands of different plants and over 2 million happy customers? Well, they've got all the plants that your yard needs, like fruit trees, privacy trees, flowering trees, shrubs, and so much more. Whatever plants you're interested in, Fast Growing Trees has you covered. Find the perfect fit for your climate and space. Fast Growing Trees makes it easy to get your dream yard, plus you get support from their trained plant experts. They're on call to help you with your landscape. Choose the right plants and learn how to care for them, whether you've got a big yard, a small yard, or no yard. They've got over 6,000 plants to fill any space, indoor too. And again, full-size privacy trees as well. You can't beat it. This spring, they've got the best deals for your yard, up to half off on select plants and other deals. And listeners to our show get 15% off on top of those great sales that they have every single day, and values as well. 15% off your first purchase when you use the offer code DACE at checkout. That's an additional 15% off at fastgrowingtrees.com using the code DACE at checkout at fastgrowingtrees.com, code DACE for the additional 15% off, because now's the perfect time to plant. Offer valid for a limited time. Terms and conditions may apply. All right, Aaron, region number 2.
We now go to the diversity region, where the second number 1 seed is the Marsh family.
Oh, give me hope, Kamala. Hope, Kamala, give me hope, Kamala, for the election.
And give us hope, Kamala will be taking on the 8th seed in the diversity region. Rights come from where?
Christian nationalists, not Christians, by the way, because Christian nationalists is very different, is that they believe that our rights as Americans, as all human beings, don't come from any earthly authority. They don't come from Congress. They don't come from the Supreme Court. They come from God.
The 2 seed in diversity region is the mobile baby killing clinic outside the Democrat National Convention, and it'll be taking on the 7 seed, the Ides of Marsh, Jeffrey Marsh.
It is so weird that libs of TikTok and these far-right accounts post about children obsessively.
The 3 seed in the diversity region is philosopher Judith Butler, who doesn't deny her work on gender accidentally gave license to pedophilia. Whoopsie-doopsie.
My work would indoctrinate them, or my work would license pedophilia, or my work and the work of gender more broadly would teach them how to become homosexual, or teach them that they must become homosexual, which is kind Kind of true, kind of wild.
Whoops will be taking on the 6th seed Black Vigilante.
We need some black vigilantes.
That's right.
People want to jump up and choke us and kill us for being loud. How about we do the same?
The 4 seed in the diversity region is Richard Dawkins, man of faith.
Well, I must say I was slightly horrified to hear that Ramadan is being promoted instead. I do think that we are culturally a Christian country. I call myself a cultural Christian.
Yeah, it's like that old saying goes, an atheist is when Muhammad lives 2,000 miles away. A Christian atheist is when Muhammad lives next door. Dawkins, man of faith, will be taking on the 5 seed Governor Weirdmer. That does it for the diversity region. We'll go to the panel now for analysis.
I have to tell you that there's a couple of tough ones here. I think Governor Weirdmer is maybe the biggest underseed so far in this entire tournament. And it's just very rare for a 5 seed to win it all. And I say that wearing the block M today, my team given the 5 seed. It's usually kind of a seed to nowhere. You're not quite good enough to get a top seed in the cushy road, but you're not so bad enough either, that you maybe can get a favorable upset in a tough region. You're kind of right in the middle, so you get everybody's best shot. But in this case, I think Governor Weirdmer is going to be a tough pull. That's going to be a tough out in that bracket, I think. And I'm going to call for an upset. My first 1 seed upset. Especially given who I think the officials in this game. The officials are, this audience. And when it comes to ideology and worldview, they got a tight whistle, right? They are good. This is going to be a tightly refereed matchup between the Marsh family, as annoying as they are, okay? All right? But to have MSNBC do an entire segment that basically tried to debunk the original schema of the founding of the United States of America, I kind of think that, who referees that game matters. And in this audience, knowing how tight that whistle is going to be in that one, I'm calling for the upset in that one. Todd, I'm going to start with you. What do you think of this region?
I see almost nothing but upsets. If it wasn't for 3 versus 6, I think Whoops is utterly going to destroy Black Vigilante. I don't think Black Vigilante belongs on the court with what we saw from number 3 there. But everything else, I think Chalk is in trouble. I think we have an incredibly strong undercards.
Jill, what say you here about the diversity region?
I am absolutely with you and Todd on this one. When I look at this region in particular, this 1 seed is probably, I would guess, I don't know what the rest of them are going to be, but probably one of the weaker ones. And I was on the Steve Deace show when we showed the Marsh family initially, so I am familiar with them. I have seen that. But if you go up against MSNBC, like you're saying, Steve, that's going to be a very difficult thing for the Marsh family to overcome. And I would have something to talk to the committee about with Marsh at the very bottom, the Ides of Marsh, Jeffrey Marsh, because that's the man on this program that I have called ugly before, and kind of went out there, and it was a big day on this program. And I just think that as a 7 seed to me is just disrespectful. I thought he would be at least a top 4 seed in this bracket with the number of times that he has appeared on this show. To look at the Marsh family going ahead and getting a number 1 seed, and then Jeffrey Marsh, who is a repeat offender on this show, I thought for sure would be higher, at least a top 4 seed, like I said. So yeah, I'm with you though, Todd. Whoops is probably going to be the only one that makes it through unscathed. For the better seed in this diversity region.
So, Aaron, your seeding called out here by Jill with the Ides of Marsh. Did you take the entire season into context here, or did you just cherry pick? Did you underseed Mr. Marsh the way that Jill is accusing you?
Well, when it comes to Marxist Madness, you do have to take into account the strength of victories. So yeah, overall the resume looks really good, but is there any one victory, any one moment that any of these have that just says, hey, that stands out amidst the rest of the pack?
Yeah.
I want to ask the panel as well, what do you think in the
He's the Missouri Valley Conference of Dylan Mulvaney, is what you're saying.
Correct.
Yeah,
Thank
I got you. Yeah.
What do you think in the elitist 8? I did not plan it this way as the selection committee. We could have Marsh on Marsh Marsh crime in the elitist 8. It's a very low chance, but Marsh family versus Jeffrey Marsh could be in the elitist 8.
There's no way the Marsh family has got a very, very tough slog. And I've got some breaking news here. It turns out that the Marsh family is, in fact, related to the University of North Carolina's athletic director.
Are they?
Yes.
It makes perfect sense to me. If we had unveiled a bracket, and again, Aaron's got a tough job. There's a lot of this thing kicked off last fall, all right, and everybody's been practicing, playing hard, and to just narrow this down to 32 teams, Aaron has a really tough job. But let's just acknowledge that, okay? That being said, I think if we had taken that 2-7 matchup and put mobile abortions in the 7 spot and Mr. Marsh in the 2 spot, no one would have complained in our audience. That's how even of a game I think that one is. And for our audience now, you're pitting basically, the 2 towers of evil in our audience right now. Baby Massacre, On Demand, and a Trainee Madness. To put them together in a first round matchup, that's like Bill Self, John Calipari. That's a first round matchup in the NCAA tournament, right? When you take Baby Murder, On Demand, and Trainee Madness, and you square them off in a first round matchup, I think that one's coming down to the wire at the end.
I agree. And now that you talk, you've kind of put into context for me why the number 1 is what it is there. Because the Marsh family is responsible. They're the kind of people that make all the other stuff happen.
Great point.
Because they check that box all the time. They sign off on it. That's the nice thing to do.
Jill, any other potential upsets in this region before we get out of here for the top or bottom of the hour break?
Like I said, I think Whoops is the only one of the better seeded teams there that is actually going to get through unscathed.
So
Governor Whitmer, Weirdmer, we look at that, and I think that is going to be what the people at home really look at and say, okay, we are very familiar with this one. That I think moves on, in my opinion. We've already talked about the other 2 with the Marsh family and then the Ides of March. I think when you look at those, it's a huge first round matchup. That 2-7 seed, I think that is where all of the eyeballs are going to be. Mm-hmm. I think that is where the number of votes are going to come in.
Agreed.
And that is the one that I'm going to watch closely.
I know everybody likes those 4-5 matchups, but I think that's going to be a rout. I think you've got the high name idea of Gretchen Whitmer. You've got religious sacrilege. You put those kinds of things together. That's catnip to this audience. I think Weirdmore is going to roll. That's kind of your dog with fleas, the underdog. Everybody maybe overlooks, but in the public it kind of overlooks. But I think that's not even going to be close.
She's going to roll through that bracket like she rolls through the Republican GOP in Michigan.
That would be impressive if she could pull that off in this field. No doubt about that. All right, we'll come back. You've seen half of the field of Marxist Madness. The second half is still to come. Gird your loins. Next. Thank you guys so much for all your generosity you've shown our friends over at Preborn since we started that partnership with them here at the Blaze the last few years. You guys have literally helped to save tens of thousands of babies' lives. Let's save even more, as well as the souls of their mama. Stopping her from committing a grievous sin of murdering her own child and then saving the baby's life on top of it. How does Preborn do it? What's the key to their success? Well, they just follow the all-time best-selling notion of how you persuade. There's truth and there's grace. And the truth comes in first to confront and prick the conscience. Moms are confronted at a preborn clinic. They're confronted with that ultrasound. They hear that baby's heartbeat, so they know that's another person. That doesn't belong to me. That's not just some blob of tissue. And then if mom chooses life and steps into grace, they're there then to offer her even more prenatal care, postnatal care, even practical things like car seats, formula, more. All of this, by the way, is free to the mom and her baby, although none of it is actually free. That's where you and I come in, make a tax-deductible donation today to keep alive the fight for life, while the political arena is completely lost on this issue right now. You still have ministries out there like Preborn that are are waging literal soul-to-soul combat against the spirit of the age. Make a donation today. Say the keyword baby when you dial pound 250 on your mobile phone. Or just go to preborn.com/Steve. That's preborn.com/Steve. And Preborn has a 100% charity rating, so you can give to them with confidence at preborn.com/Steve. Let's welcome back in our friend and colleague, Jill Savage. Half of the field of Marxist Madness has been unveiled. Aaron, let's get to bracket number 3.
Moving on now in Marxist Madness to the equity region, where the number 1 seed is Garbage.
The only garbage I see floating out there is just supporters.
Thank you, Joe. Garbage will be taking on the 8 seed 15 times 4.
What is 15 times 4?
15 times 4.
Gosh.
20, 30. 23.
And Kennesaw State is doing just fine, guys. The 2 seed in the equity region is Man Enough for Kamala.
I'm a man.
I'm a man.
I'm a man, man.
And I'm man enough. Man enough to cook my steak rare.
Hey, another thing I sure as shit am not afraid of. Women.
I'm not afraid of women. I'm not afraid of women.
They want to control their bodies? I say go for it.
I'm man enough to help them win.
Man Enough will be taking on the National Cathedral Witch.
There are gay, lesbian, and transgender children in Democratic, Republican, and independent families. Some who fear for their lives.
The 3 seed in the equity region is Girls Gone Primal. Girls Gone Primal is up against the 6 seed High-Tech Human Trafficking.
Oh, no, I'll put it back on.
I know.
He went back.
The 4 seed in the equity region is We Demand Aid.
Why should the university be obligated to provide food to people who've taken over a building?
Do you want students to die of dehydration and starvation or get severely ill? Crazy to say because we're on an Ivy League campus, but this is like basic humanitarian aid we're asking for. Like, could people please have a glass of water?
We Demand Aid will be taking on the 5 seed Go F Yourself.
I say this in the most disrespectful way possible. I don't care if you are my family. I don't care if you're my friend. I don't care if we've been friends our entire lives. You can literally go f*** yourself if you voted for Donald Trump.
That's it for the equity region of Marxist Madness. Panel, your thoughts?
Well, I think that there's going to be several teams upset about being placed in this region. This is a loaded region. Loaded region. And I think we maybe, with all due respect again to the hard work Aaron put into this, have to question the overall seeding process. Because this region is absolutely loaded. For example, as soon as I saw Man Enough is a 2 seed, and as soon as I saw that, Todd, you heard me say off the air, it's over. That's your winner.
Yeah.
And then I saw who the 7 seed was. I'm not so sure the National Cathedral Witch shouldn't be a 2 seed in like all the other regions. All right. So I think Man Enough clearly has enough to go all the way, but I don't think it's a guarantee can survive even that opening round matchup. I think this region of equity, ironically, is inequitable. I think that this region is absolutely loaded with championship picks, and I think Girls Gone Primal might be the strongest 3 seed, Todd, that we have seen yet.
Yeah, well, my champion is the winner of 3 versus 6. High-tech trafficking, I mean, my goodness, that game itself is going to be an absolute bloodbath. But whoever wins it it's only going to make them stronger. That's my champion. Whoever wins that game.
Jill, your thoughts?
And Enough is strong enough to go the entire way in this bracket. I do like Garbage though as a number 1 seed because of the effect that it had late in the election cycle. It really brought and coalesced everybody together late, and it became a very, very big deal. Where Man Enough, though, is still, it has that lasting power that we need for them to continue on week after week in this bracket. But We Demand Aid is a strong 4 seed as well. I wouldn't be surprised if that one at least would make it to the elitist 8. I could see We Demand Aid with a very strong showing here.
See, I think this is also why it's important. I know that there's an argument right now that we don't need women in sportscasting. That's another male-dominated area that women are invading. But Todd, and credit to you for this, Jill. Todd, you and I, we would have never considered the angle of how important it is that Man Enough has what it takes to last. You and I would have never considered something like that. All right. And so this is, again, where you do need a female perspective, Jill. So thank you for that. Really appreciative. Aaron, I want to go back to you for a second. And I'm going to try to put this nicely, but how in the hell did you justify National Cathedral Witch getting only a 7 seed?
They only have one good win, one good moment. That's it. And a lot of these are
But it's a banger, bro.
It's a banger, but I mean, who else? I mean, you say this all the time. I mean, who else are you going to take down? I mean, do you really think that National Cathedral Witch is as big of an impact as garbage, as big of an impact as high-tech trafficking? No, I mean, who are you going to take out and put National Cathedral Witch higher?
Well, there's an added value with National Cathedral Witch because you get the J.D. Vance facial expression value added placed into that clip at the same time, right? All right. So at the very least, Aaron, can we at least admit here on behalf of the selection committee, there is no 7 seed more memeable than National Cathedral Witch just for that alone?
I will concede nothing. Also, National Cathedral Witch had a $65,000 bonus for making the field of 32. Wait, was I supposed to say that out loud?
No, I think that, I'm sorry, was this you're referring to the North Carolina 80? And it was 68,000.
What? Oh, 68,000.
68,000,
okay.
Indeed. Okay. All right, and we got to make sure we've got time for our picks here. So let's get to it. We've got one last region to go.
We now go to the final region of Marxist Madness, inclusion, where the number 1 seed is the Gynocracy. Gynocracy is up against the 8 seed Stop Killing Us.
The debate about our people is killing us.
Thank you for your testimony.
Please stop killing us.
The 2 seed in the inclusion region is this Springfield, Ohio dad who cares more about the Haitians who killed his son than his actual son.
I wish that my son, Aiden Clark, was killed by a 60-year-old white man. I bet you never thought anyone would ever say something so blunt. But if that guy killed my 11-year-old son, the incessant group of hate-spewing people would leave us alone.
Haitians over son will be taking on the 7 seed Gabraham Lincoln. The 3 seed in the inclusion region is Transuterus.
The first trans woman to have a successful uterus transplant, ovaries and eggs included. And I want to be the first trans woman to have an abortion.
Transuterus will be up against the 6 seed Deport the Whites.
The only ones that should be deported are the white people because no white people actually belong in this country.
So where are you going?
And the final matchup of the Marxist Madness tournament is Roots Part 1.
That is a list of the passengers on the Mayflower.
No, I can't believe this. No. My ancestors did not come here on the Mayflower.
Your ancestors came on the Mayflower.
No.
You are descended from one of the 101 people who sailed on the Mayflower.
Roots Part 1, the 4 seed will be up against the 5 seed Roots Part 2.
Wow. I'm a little bit in shock. I just always thought of myself as Puerto Rican, half Puerto Rican. I didn't think I was, my family was originally from Spain and slaveholders.
The field is set for Marxist Madness. Now, the voting begins.
I could not keep my composure during that. And then when I thought I had it back, the Roots Part 1 and Part 2 was great. Oh, man. The right side of... it's only fitting that the right side of the bracket is stronger, of course. But the right side of this bracket is definitely, in terms of the depth and caliber of championship teams, I think, Jill, it's clearly the stronger half. This bracket is also loaded with championship contenders.
Roots Part 1 going up against Roots Part 2. I thought that as a conference... I thought that they couldn't play each other in the first round. I thought they had to be separated until at least the Elitist 8. right? We have to go through and we have to make sure that we do whatever we can.
You don't want to marginalize a conference like that, Jill.
Conference.
You don't want to marginalize a conference like that. Yes.
Exactly. But I will say that all of the 2-7 matchups are the strongest matchups in every bracket the entire way around. Because when you have the Haitians over the Sun up against gay Lincoln, that is a very, very strong first round matchup. And I look at Haitians over Sun, and you just see the mental gymnastics that have to go through this. Whereas if somebody else had murdered my 11-year-old son, then we wouldn't be having this conversation right now. The fact that a father can go out there and say this, that is a very, very strong 2-seed, and the committee should be applauded. I know that we've had a lot of negatives against the committee, but that is a very, very strong 2-seed that we have there.
100% agree. Todd, what do you think?
This is the toughest bracket to pick. A lot of incomplete teams in that they all have the biggest Achilles heels, but they all have players who can get hot. And if they get streaky, watch out.
No doubt. No doubt. All right, let's go and reset the board here, Aaron. Starting with the original bracket, let's have the panel go through. Make a pick. Who do you think comes out of the region? All right, and give us an upset. Let's start with the tolerance region. I'm going to stick with who I had in my bracketology, the number 1 overall seed going in, Dick Levine. Even though the panel doesn't agree with me that Mamala could pull an upset here, but I just think in the end, I mean, Dick Levine is an iconic image for the spirit of the age. So I'm going to have Dick Levine as the winner out of this region. And I think Jill, you know what? I'm going to predict that the number 1 seed for Hamas. That's my upset in the region. I think we have an 8-1 upset right away. I think the screaming at kids, I think, is going to hit home a lot more for our audience than for Hamas will. I think they'll identify with the kid a lot more than for Hamas. So I'm going to go with Dick Levine as my champion in the tolerance region. Got to do this quickly. And for Hamas is my first round upset. Todd, go.
I agree entirely with that analysis.
All right, Jill, what do you think?
I don't think that you've looked at your X mentions lately. I think for Hamas has a much stronger chance to make it at least to the elitist 8. But I'm with you. Dick Levine ultimately comes out of the tolerance bracket.
All right, let's go to the bottom of the left side of the bracket now, the diversity side of things. I'm already on. I think we've got Governor Weirdmer, I think, is going to win this bracket. Too much name ID, too much religious sacrilege in one clip. And I think the number 1 seed goes down here as well. I think that, having a channel basically say there's no such country as the United States of America, even as obnoxious as the Marsh family is, Jill, I think we have another 8-1 upset here.
I absolutely agree. This is, I think, the weakest 1 seed that we see in the entire tournament. They are on notice. And Governor Whitmer, she has too much name ID. But again, I think Ides of March is still going to be one of them that I look at. But I think ultimately coming out of this bracket, it is Governor Whitmer.
All right. Todd?
I'm with Whitmer here, but whoops. Don't sleep on whoops.
Of course. Let's go to equity. Or with, for that matter. Let's go to equity. And, okay. I'm going to go with Man Enough because I thought Man Enough should have been a number 1 seed. But again, it would not shock. I think literally every team in this bracket could win the bracket. All right. I don't even know that there would be an upset just by seeding. I think they're all every team is that serious of a contender. I'm just going to go with Man Enough to win the equity bracket, the 2 seed. Todd?
Girls Gone Primal, I think they're relentless. It's going to be close because high-tech baby trafficking, it is going to give them a run for their money, but then Girls Gone Primal are going to run it.
Jill, what do you got in the equity region?
Yeah, nobody can beat Man Enough. No one is Man Enough. That is going to go through smooth sailing for Man Enough in the equity bracket.
All right, so Jill thinks Man Enough is Man Enough to dominate what we think might be the toughest bracket, and that brings us finally to the inclusion bracket, which also is loaded with teams. But I think I'm going to go with the Gynocracy because it kind of summarizes almost everything else in this field. I mean, this is the 1-1 seed I think makes it through, especially because Roots 1 and 2 are going to end up canceling. One of them is going to cancel the other out. What do you think, Aaron? I'm sorry, Jill, what do you think?
I think that Roots Part 2 has a very strong chance. I don't know if we're taking in all of this into account, right? When you look at it, no, my ancestors cannot be cannot be slaveholders.
Yes.
This is not happening, right? The realization that Roots Part 2 runs deep could come through and really make some headway here in
Plus
the
everybody
inclusion
hates
bracket.
the view. Plus everybody hates the view.
Exactly.
Yeah, good point.
Exactly.
All right, Todd, what's your pick here in inclusion?
I'm also going with number one, but I think one of the strongest runs from a lower seed is going to be Gay-ing Lincoln. A little bit unexpected, but like I said, if they get streaky hot like they've shown they can, that thing could go a long way.
I mean, that imaging packs a wallop for sure.
It does.
All right, Aaron, the last minute here as the man that selected this field, your closing thoughts, any second thoughts whatsoever?
Well, check out Steve's X profile later this afternoon for your opportunity to vote for each of these matchups. 16 matchups that we just went through here. 32 different contestants. You will have until Thursday morning to vote on whom you want to advance to the Soviet 16. On our way to the Fatal Four. The road to the Fatal Four begins now.
At Steve Deace Show on X is where you can vote. At Steve Deace Show on X. Overall, I know we picked at some things specifically, Aaron, but given the task you had to filter through this amount of demonic energy, it's the right 32. Maybe the seeds we could haggle with, but the overall field you've selected, brother, I think I speak for everybody. Well done, good and faithful servant. Well done.
Better be, because this took years off my life.
not to mention your soul. Indeed. Jill, good to see you as always. Thank you, Jill.
I'm so invested in this bracket.
And we are as well.
I can't wait.
Neither can we. Now we give it to you, the people. You make the decision. Romans 8:28.